The small community in North Carolina never forgot the day she disappeared. It was a cold autumn morning in the early 70s when a young woman vanished without a trace, leaving behind a family desperate for answers and a town gripped by fear. For more than 50 years, her name became synonymous with one of the state's most haunting unsolved mysteries. But in a stunning turn of events that has left residents reeling, authorities have finally made an arrest that no one saw coming. The story begins in a quiet rural town where everyone knew everyone else. Back then, life moved at a slower pace. Neighbors left their doors unlocked, children played freely in the streets, and trust was the foundation of daily life. It was against this backdrop of innocence that tragedy struck. The victim was a beloved member of the community, known for her kind heart and bright smile. She worked at the local diner, where she served coffee and homemade pie to familiar faces day after day. Her disappearance shattered the sense of security that residents had taken for granted. On that fateful morning, she left her home to run what should have been a simple errand. She told her family she would be back within the hour. When she failed to return, concern quickly turned to panic. Her car was found abandoned on a rural road just outside town, the driver's side door left open, her purse still sitting on the passenger seat. There were no signs of a struggle, no clear indication of what had happened. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. The initial investigation launched immediately, with local law enforcement canvassing the area and interviewing anyone who might have seen something. Search parties combed through nearby woods and fields, calling out her name, hoping against hope that she had simply gotten lost or injured. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, but no trace of her was ever found. The case grew cold as leads dried up and investigators hit one dead end after another. Her family never gave up hope. Through the decades, they continued to push for answers, holding vigils on the anniversary of her disappearance and pleading with anyone who might know something to come forward. Her mother, who has since passed away, spent the rest of her life searching for closure, visiting the police station regularly to ask if there were any updates. Her siblings grew older, started families of their own, but the pain of not knowing what happened to their sister never faded. The empty chair at holiday gatherings served as a constant reminder of the hole she left behind. As years passed, the case file gathered dust in the evidence room. Detectives retired, and new generations of law enforcement took their place, but the mystery remained unsolved. The case was reviewed periodically, but without new evidence or witnesses, there was little investigators could do. The small town moved forward, but the shadow of that disappearance lingered. Parents became more protective of their children, and the carefree atmosphere that once defined the community never fully returned. Then, decades later, advances in forensic technology breathed new life into the investigation. Cold case detectives began re-examining old evidence using modern techniques that were not available in the early 70s. DNA analysis, which was still in its infancy back then, had become a powerful tool for solving crimes. Investigators submitted evidence collected from the scene all those years ago to specialized laboratories, hoping that science might finally provide the answers that traditional detective work could not. The breakthrough came when DNA extracted from evidence was run through genealogical databases. This relatively new investigative technique had already helped solve numerous cold cases across the country, reuniting families with long-lost loved ones and bringing criminals to justice. By comparing the DNA profile to publicly available genetic information, investigators were able to build a family tree that eventually led them to a suspect. The name that emerged from the investigation shocked everyone who heard it. The suspect was not a stranger or a drifter passing through town. He was someone who had been living in the community all along, hiding in plain sight for more than 5 decades. He had a family, a job, and a reputation as a quiet, unremarkable man. Neighbors described him as polite and reserved, someone who kept to himself but never caused any trouble. The revelation that this seemingly ordinary person could be connected to such a heinous crime sent shockwaves through the town. Detectives worked meticulously to build their case. They conducted surveillance, gathered additional evidence, and interviewed people who had known both the victim and the suspect back in the early 70s. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. Investigators discovered that the suspect had known the victim, though their connection was not widely known at the time. They had crossed paths through mutual acquaintances, and witnesses recalled seeing them together on occasion, though no one thought much of it back then. As the investigation progressed, detectives uncovered additional evidence that linked the suspect to the crime. They found inconsistencies in statements he had made to police during the original investigation, small details that had been overlooked at the time but now took on new significance. They also discovered that he had abruptly changed his behavior in the weeks following the disappearance, becoming withdrawn and nervous, though again, no one connected it to the case at the time. The arrest took place on a quiet morning, much like the one when the victim disappeared. Officers arrived at the suspect's home before dawn, armed with a warrant and backed by a team of investigators. Neighbors watched in disbelief as the elderly man was led away in handcuffs, struggling to reconcile the person they thought they knew with the accusations now being leveled against him. News of the arrest spread quickly through the small town, igniting a firestorm of emotions. For the victim's family, the arrest brought a complex mixture of relief and renewed grief. After more than 50 years of not knowing, they finally had answers, but those answers came with the painful confirmation that their loved one was indeed gone. Her nieces and nephews, who had grown up hearing stories about the aunt they never got to meet, found themselves grappling with the reality of what had happened. The family released a statement thanking law enforcement for their tireless work and expressing hope that justice would finally be served. The community reaction was equally complicated. Some residents felt vindicated that the case had finally been solved, while others struggled with the betrayal of discovering that someone they had known for years could be capable of such a crime. Local officials held town hall meetings to address concerns and answer questions about the investigation. The police chief praised the cold case unit for their dedication and emphasized the importance of never giving up on seeking justice, no matter how much time has passed. The suspect was charged with serious crimes related to the disappearance and death of the victim. Legal experts noted that prosecuting a case this old presents unique challenges. Many of the original witnesses have passed away or their memories have faded with time. Physical evidence, while carefully preserved, may not meet the same standards required in modern courtrooms. The defense team will likely argue that the passage of time has made it impossible for their client to receive a fair trial, as he cannot properly defend himself against allegations from so long ago. Prosecutors, however, expressed confidence in their case. They pointed to the DNA evidence as particularly compelling, along with the inconsistencies in the suspect's statements and the testimony of witnesses who are still alive. They also noted that advances in forensic science have actually made it easier to analyze old evidence, potentially providing stronger proof than what would have been available decades ago. The district attorney vowed to pursue justice for the victim and her family, no matter how long it takes. The case has reignited discussions about cold cases and the importance of continuing to investigate unsolved crimes. Advocates for victims' families have long argued that no case should ever be truly closed, and this arrest serves as a powerful example of why. Advances in technology mean that evidence considered useless decades ago can now crack cases wide open. Law enforcement agencies across the country have been reviewing their cold case files with renewed interest, wondering what other mysteries might finally be solved. The impact on the community has been profound. For older residents who remember the original disappearance, the arrest has brought back memories they had tried to bury. Some have spoken about the fear that gripped the town in the months following her disappearance, when parents kept their children close and people looked at their neighbors with suspicion. Others have reflected on how the unsolved mystery hung over the community like a dark cloud, a constant reminder that not all stories have happy endings. Younger residents who were not alive when the victim disappeared have found themselves captivated by the case. They have researched the history, pored over old newspaper articles, and discussed the developments on social media. For them, it serves as a connection to their town's past and a reminder that history is not always as distant as it seems. The case has become a topic of conversation in coffee shops, at community gatherings, and around dinner tables throughout the area. The investigation also shed light on how much police work has changed over the past 5 decades. In the early 70s, detectives relied primarily on witness statements, physical evidence that could be analyzed with limited technology and good old-fashioned legwork. They did not have access to surveillance cameras, cell phone records, or computer databases. The tools that modern investigators take for granted simply did not exist. Yet the original investigators did their best with what they had, carefully preserving evidence and documenting the case, never knowing that their work would eventually help solve the mystery decades later. Experts in forensic genealogy have pointed to this case as an example of how their field can bring closure to families who have waited years or even decades for answers. By combining traditional detective work with cutting-edge genetic analysis, they have been able to identify suspects in cases that were once considered unsolvable. Privacy advocates have raised concerns about the use of genealogical databases in criminal investigations, arguing that people who submit their DNA for ancestry testing do not necessarily consent to it being used to catch criminals. Law enforcement counters that solving serious crimes and bringing justice to victims outweighs these privacy concerns. The victim's story has taken on new meaning in light of the arrest. While she was once known primarily as a missing person, a face on a poster, she is now being remembered for who she was in life. Friends and family have shared memories of her kindness, her dreams for the future, and the light she brought into their lives. They have spoken about her love of music, her talent for baking, and her hopes of one day traveling beyond the small town where she grew up. In death, she has become more than just a victim. She has become a symbol of persistence, of the importance of never giving up, and of the truth that justice may be delayed, but it does not have to be denied forever. As the legal process moves forward, many questions remain unanswered. The suspect has pleaded not guilty, setting the stage for what promises to be a closely watched trial. Legal analysts expect the proceedings to take months, if not years, given the complexity of prosecuting such an old case. The defense will likely file numerous motions, challenging the admissibility of evidence and arguing that their client cannot receive a fair trial. The prosecution will work to convince a jury that despite the passage of time, the evidence clearly points to the suspect's guilt. The town where this tragedy unfolded finds itself at a crossroads. Some residents want to move past this dark chapter and focus on healing, while others feel that fully confronting what happened is necessary before true healing can begin. Community leaders have discussed creating a memorial to honor the victim and ensure that her story is not forgotten. There have been calls for increased funding for cold case investigations, both locally and statewide, to ensure that other families waiting for answers might also find closure. The case serves as a powerful reminder that time does not erase the impact of violent crime. The victim's family has lived with uncertainty and pain for more than 50 years. Their lives were forever altered by her disappearance, shaped by the constant wondering and the absence of closure. While the arrest cannot bring her back or undo the decades of suffering, it represents a crucial step toward justice and healing. For them, knowing what happened is both a relief and a new source of grief, as they must now confront the reality they had long feared. The broader implications of this case extend far beyond one small town in North Carolina. It demonstrates that advances in technology can breathe new life into even the oldest investigations. It shows that dedicated law enforcement officers who refuse to give up can make a difference, even when success seems impossible. And it proves that communities, no matter how much time has passed, never truly forget those who were lost. The arrest may have shocked the community, but it also restored faith that truth and justice can prevail, even after decades in the darkness.